my focus on the subjects that I address require a broader audience, and particularly a Western audience as well as an Eastern audience. It's not that I don't want to translate my books, I'm trying, but I'm actually a very poor writer in Arabic, and I'm a very good writer in English. See, this is my latest book, The Liberal Geo-Wave. It's my third book. Usually, when you talk about liberalism, you have a positive side and a negative side. There's an upside of liberalism, which is usually to provide liberties for individuals and societies. That's the main idea. That's the tagline of liberalism. Everyone wants to tell you, you know, we live in a liberal society. We live in a happy society. Why are we happy? Because we are all liberal. What does liberal mean? Well, it's freedom. It's the passion to be creative, to be an individual. You know, liberalism is opposite to oppression. It's opposite to war and destruction and all the sad things in life. Liberalism is against all these oppressive measures that have been taken by the church, like in the medieval church, the Catholic medieval church, and even some of the Protestant churches. They were really bad, you know, and liberalism is good. This is the image of liberalism. This is what they want us to see on the surface. Being a Christian has become more and more of a taboo ever since the French Revolution, probably, if not before. So why are we living in this kind of system? Why did we develop into the situation that we are in right now? This is what we are trying to answer here today. We will talk about the positive side and the negative side of liberalism. On the positive side, of course, we have individual freedoms and egalitarianism. Freedoms are important and egalitarianism is important. Both of them are important. But unfortunately, with liberalism, it's a zero-sum game because you cannot have them both. It's like having the cake and eating it. If you want too much freedom, you will sacrifice egalitarianism. And if you want too much egalitarianism, you're going to sacrifice freedom. Another positive side for liberalism is democracy, which is great. Everybody loves a democracy, right? I mean, look at how America invaded Iraq for the sake of democracy. It's wonderful. So democracy, the idea of democracy is the separation of authorities for better accountability. That's the ideal of democracy. When you have separation of authorities, you have the legislative, you have the executive, you have the judiciary. Basically, the separation of powers will allow you to have checks and balances, and always one will be able to stand accountable before the other. That's a great thing, unless everybody's bought, which is the case in this world today. Another positive side is social and economic development. It is a positive side. Let's not deny that these are desirables in every liberal environment. Everybody wants to develop economically. I mean, who wouldn't want to live at ease with enough money in the bank and a car and a house and no mortgage, whatever? Everybody desires these things. And the theory goes that with liberalism, allowing for freedoms, you can have these things. That's what the Americans call the American dream, which is nice. I wish we could have the Lebanese dream someday, although the Lebanese dream is not dying. So, the negative side, collectivism. That's a big negative, right? I mean, one of the collectivist environments in liberalism, of course, is communism. Now you might say, is communism liberal? Well, yes, of course it's liberal. Actually, many of the liberal values today, like feminism, like discarding the traditional idea of marriage, these actually were communist ideas because they wanted to destroy the patriarchal marital system so that the society would truly become free. And they said, you know what, instead of these marriages, let's make free unions of love. And everybody would live in these communal homes where the children would be raised by everyone, basically. So they wanted to break down the family unit. If you look at today, This is what they are trying to do. So definitely, going back to on the topic of collectivism, definitely communism is part of the liberal umbrella, so to speak. Another part of the liberal umbrella is fascism. Now this is controversial because many liberals would now say, no, you are mistaken. Fascism is a remnant of the ancient medieval church, whatever. No, it's not. It's actually progressive. Fascism is progressive idealism. That's what actually fascism is very close to communism. It has slightly different features in it. For example, communism is universal, fascism is regional. It's not actually national, by the way. The Nazi party was never nationalistic. It was racist. That's what it was. Why would you go about calling the Nazi party nationalistic when you could easily give it a very bad negative connotation by saying it's racist? That's what it is. It is racist. Because it is racist, everybody who was Aryan deserved to be ranked first. And that's why Hitler invaded Austria, and then he went and joined Czechoslovakia. Not all of Czechoslovakians were Aryans, but some of them were. The others who weren't, they were in a lot of trouble. So the ideals, even of fascism, they are progressive ideals. Actually, Nazi party is a socialist party. I mean, it's in its name. It's a labor socialist party. Anyways, I'm digressing too much. Another negative side is coercive regulations, taxes, and processes. Basically, the processes, the more you add processes, what are you basically doing? You are creating big government. And big government is always a big title in all the leftist regimes and all the leftist ideologies. Because when you are creating a big umbrella, a big government, you are promoting collectivism and you are promoting egalitarianism over individual freedoms. So you are progressing more and more to the left. The more you go to the left, the more you will prefer egalitarianism and with all the things that come with it. Higher taxes, it's basically to equalize between the social castes. That's the idea of it. Now on the right side, because this is the left, on the right side they prefer individual freedoms, but also at the expense of egalitarianism. This is the problem with the liberal system. It's always a zero-sum game. You cannot have them both. Another problem is, of course, shifting morals. Where shall I begin with this one? That's a big one. Now, many people would say, but that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I mean, the LGBT flag, that's wow, there's so many colors. Actually, you know what? You might be surprised to know that the LGBT flag was raised in Lebanon. It was. Now, it caused a lot of stir, that's for sure. But that's the point, basically. One of the reasons why I'm writing this book, I wrote this book actually, because liberalism is not just a Western phenomenon, it's encroaching on the entire world. And this is the thing, you people of the West, you have responsibility, you are the leaders of the world. Once you make a mess in your countries, you are not just messing up your own countries, you are messing up the entire world. Okay? So it's important that you know this. It's important that you bear responsibility over your actions, because not only your children are being affected, but ours as well. I mean, you have the transgenders, you have the LGBTQ+, you have the abrasive feminism. I'm not talking about every kind of feminism. I'm talking about the abrasive kind, the kind that destroys societies. Unfortunately, it does. Some forms of feminism, they do that. I mean, if every woman in the world should not bear children because she must look after herself, what would happen to the society? What would happen to the future of this society if there are no children in the society? I mean, doesn't that make sense? I know that this is not what feminism stands for in everything, but some people can take it to this extreme, and it is abrasive and it is dangerous. You have also debauchery, which is a big problem. You have the sanctity of marriage that is being trampled upon. If you notice, all these things that I've mentioned, transgenders, LGBTQ, feminism, debauchery, all these things, they are attacking the sexuality. They are trying to erode the morality of a society. That's the idea. Why is that? Why is it so important to erode the morality of a certain society? They say morality is subjective. What's the point of that? Why do they say that? I mean, I used to have plenty of debates with many atheists who insisted that reality is objective, but morality is subjective. I told them, but you know, the morality, it comes from truth. Is truth subjective? Then they say, yes. Well, if truth is subjective, then also reality is subjective, because truth projects reality. That's what truth is. If the reality is subjective, then the truth is subjective. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot have the cake and eat it. Either your reality is subjective and your morality is subjective, or your reality is objective and your morality is objective. Why do you want an objective reality? You know why? Because they say science is important. And based on science, we can determine everything and we can interpret everything. But you cannot have it both ways. Either both are objective or both are subjective. I will elaborate on this later on. I've had so many discussions with so many atheists, and it's quite interesting to find they just stop talking. It's interesting to discover that, but then when you try to introduce them to Christ, they just shut down. They just don't want to talk about it anymore. Why is that? Because, you know, they'll do anything just to stay the way that they are. Unfortunately, they accuse others of being indoctrinated, but I believe that the atheists are the most indoctrinated people. I mean, they really enjoy attacking Christianity at every turn. It's like a sport to them. It's a blood sport. You know, they just go at Christians, you know. Christians are this, Christians are immoral, Christians are unethical, you should not indoctrinate the children, this and this and this, you know, all the time. And when you fight back, all of a sudden, you are the immoral person because you are attacking them. But you're just defending yourself. So definitely all the liberal proponents would want us to focus on the positive side and less on the negative side. Not that some liberals would see shifting morals as a negative thing. Actually, they call that progressive and equality and liberation. It's a shame. These negatives will produce, first of all, predatory capitalism. Normal capitalism, what is that? It's when someone puts off his own money to buy some goods, to try to trade with them. Another person would manufacture something, another person would grow something, another person would fish something. All of them together, they form a cohesive community, and everybody will benefit from this. Families will grow, societies will grow, technologies will increase. All of this is good, but what is predatory capitalism? Well, of course, it's Karl Marx would say it's the exploitation of the many by the few. The elite, the bourgeois, will exploit the proletariat. Of course, that's always the case. I'm not denying that. But nowadays, our modern day capitalism has really taken this to a whole new level. I mean, Karl Marx would not have even dreamt this would go this far. Usually, when there is usury, okay, the idea of usury is that one lends money to someone else and he expects the money back with interest. The banks, they have taken this to the extreme limit so that they could maximize on the profit. It's really great being a banker, by the way. It's the best job in the world. You know why? Because basically, you are managing somebody else's money, you are giving it to someone else, and you are getting interest, which is your fee, which is your profit, and you did not really put up an investment in it, other than the marketing, I think. So basically, the banks are managing the world's money. And how are they doing it? They manage the world money, and they make profit out of it by interest. You say, okay, this is the capitalistic model. If you don't like it, don't put your money in the bank. Don't take out loans. The problem is, if one person takes out a loan to buy a house, and then another, and then another, and then another, what will happen to the housing market? The prices would go up, right? Inflation. So you have this problem of usury, which is a big problem, which will keep on being extremely problematic. It will keep on sucking the money out of the many into the hands of the few, because that's what's really happening, you know? When you are working extra hard to pay back the interest to your bank, what you are doing is you are creating money in the society and giving some of it to the bank, okay? But eventually this surplus, this added value in a society will reach a threshold at a certain point, you know? Every market, every industry will get that, you know? You reach a certain threshold, and once you reach that, you will find it extremely difficult to pay back the interest that you owe. And what will happen then? People will default. When people default, what will the bank do? He will take the assets. He will take over a hard asset, and he will either sell it for peanuts, or he will keep it for himself in order to cover his costs and make also extra profit. So this is the whole game. Basically, the money and the assets are being drained from the world into the hands of the few. And these few are very few. All of this happened because of usury, because we accepted the fact that we have to pay interest against the instructions of the Bible. So this is one point, predatory capitalism. Another point, oppressive leftist ideologies. As I've said earlier, we have communism, we have also other systems like fascism. That's a side effect, that's a negative side of liberal products, or a side effect. Wars, revolutions, instability. Of course, there have always been wars in history. And you can say, well, what about the Crusades? What about the Inquisition? Blah, blah, blah. We've heard all that, man. We've heard it. I am one of the countries who were invaded by the Crusaders, okay? I know what the Crusaders did. I know that the atrocities that they did. But it's not a drop in the ocean of what Stalin did. It's not a drop in the ocean of what Hitler did, okay? So we have to really compare apples to apples. The wars that happened in the 20th century have resulted in more casualties than the entire history of the world. Can you believe that? That's a byproduct of liberalism. Family bonds, more divorces, high divorce rate. Why is that? Why is that? I mean, in the past, the man knew his role, the woman knew her role. But you are a patriarchal pig! Go to hell! Hold on a second. We've been living in this society, world society, local societies, in this way. Now, were there oppressions of women? Of course, there were. We should learn from our mistakes and try to improve them. But we should not have this knee-jerk reaction by going overboard with feminism. It doesn't make sense, guys. Come on. How will it work? If we are going to abort all the babies, what will happen? Aside from the terrible genocide, I mean, I insist that this is a genocide. I mean, if you cry a river over the genocide of the Jews, you should cry an ocean over the genocide of the unborn babies, those innocents. Moving on, that's not even talking about euthanasia, which is also a very, very, very big problem. Finally, of course, we teach our children to walk away from tradition. This is basically this is the heart of liberalism, actually. We teach our children to always rebel over our parents. This is not new, actually. It started ever since the Reformation, because when Martin Luther rebelled over his church, and then after that there were the people of the Enlightenment, the Age of Enlightenment. They rebelled over the whole church, you know, Catholics and Protestants, everyone. And then after that You have the French Revolution, which is the culmination of the rebellion against the church, of course. But then the age of revolutions, you know, everybody's revolting against everyone, against the ruling class. And then you had another revolution, which was the communist revolution, the fascist revolution. I mean, it's endless. It's endless. Why? Because always we are teaching the children to defy their parents. That's the heart of progressivism, really. Always the children know best, you know. It's no longer the other way around. I mean, we have maybe resolved every kind of discrimination except one of them, which is ageism. Always the elderly are cast aside to die on the sidelines. So, as a Christian, okay, I'm not hiding my identity. I am a Christian. I'm a Greek Orthodox. I'm proud of my identity. I am proud of the cross of my Lord. How do I benefit from the positive side of the liberal products and avoid the negative side of the liberal products? How do I do that? Well, is there a way we can get the positive side of liberalism without the negative side? Is there a way we can do that? If you really want to know the values of liberalism, you have to look at Christianity, because liberalism borrowed its values from Christianity, which is really not very far-fetched to say. I mean, from where did liberalism come? Didn't it come from the countries that have soaked in Christian values? So really, in effect, the positive side of liberalism, all of them, they are Christian values, as I will show you. So freedom is total freedom from the shackles of sin and death. This is what freedom really is. Freedom from sin. It's not freedom to walk naked in the street. That's not the freedom. What kind of freedom is that? Freedom is freedom of sin, because sin enslaves. When someone does something wrong, for example, I mean the simplest example, when you take drugs, okay, you are hooked on drugs. Sin is this way. Sin is a drug. When you engage in a sin, for example, pornography, you are hooked on it. You become a slave to pornography. When you engage in the sin of debauchery, you get hooked on it. You just keep going up with girls, right, left, and center, until you catch something, maybe, or your wife finds out. I don't know. So basically, what the sin that you make, it will hold you captive. That's what it will do. Also, when we speak as Christians of egalitarianism, it is one where the leader is servant of all. Now, if you notice something here, it's very interesting. You will see that individual freedoms do not conflict with egalitarianism in the Christian model. Now I'm talking about genuine Christianity. You cannot say, well, this does not apply, I don't know, to the Vatican maybe. It's different. I'm talking about the early Christians here. I'm talking about, some people would say, biblical Christianity. I would rather use the term traditional Christianity. The tradition, the primary tradition, which Paul the Apostle taught Timothy, and John the Apostle taught Polycarp, and taught Ignatius of Antioch, and Polycarp taught it to Irenaeus, and so on and so forth. This kind of tradition, which brought forth the early Christianity, that valued individual freedoms as much as it valued egalitarianism, because truly the leaders of the early church were servants of all. It's not just a tagline, it was the reality. The leaders of the early church were the first people to die. They were actually targeted by the Roman government at that time. Many of them, it was like a death sentence if you are appointed a bishop. And the bishop willingly went to his death. He knew that if he was going to be appointed a bishop, he was going to face a death sentence. He was going to be thrown to the lions, hurled off a cliff, killed with a sword, burned alive like as a Roman candle. So egalitarianism is achieved when the leader steps between the wolf and the sheep. This is true egalitarianism. when your leader is your servant, just like Jesus Christ, who is our leader, and he is our ultimate servant as well, because he died on the cross for our sins. This is true egalitarianism. You see, this is where the value of egalitarianism comes from. We keep on saying, we want this, we want that. We forget where they come from. Isn't it obvious? 2,000 years of Christianity is not a picnic, okay? It was engrossed in every mindset, whether East or West. So you can see how freedoms and egalitarianism can meet only in Christianity. Why? Because only in Christianity will you sacrifice yourself for the sake of the many. It's not, I want. This is the liberal system. I want this, no, I want this. So we have to, arbitrate so that everybody will get a fair portion. But hold on, what happens to the freedom then? Freedom is sacrificed. Well, okay, fine, let's remove some of the barriers, but then this guy will eat that guy. Well, okay, what shall we do? There's always this problem. It's a zero-sum game. In Christianity, it does not exist. Why? Because Christians are required to sacrifice themselves. He who loves himself will lose it, and he who abhors himself shall gain it for eternal life. This is our calling as Christians. That's why only we can fulfill these two values without having a zero-sum game. Another point is, of course, democracy. From the beginning, the various church leaders believed in the unity of the body of Christ, while also applying independence among the various regions. To this day, the Orthodox Church uses this technique. It is called autocephaly, where every bishop and patriarch is responsible before other patriarchs and bishops, while also applying full autonomy over his affairs. So you can see how it's kind of a democratic model. These clergymen, they are accountable to each other, and they are accountable to the public. Truly, to this day, this is applicable in the Orthodox Church. Unfortunately, it is no longer applicable in the Catholic Church, and it is too chaotic in the Protestant Church. It might be applicable somewhere. I'm not so sure. I will not say something I do not know. But the Orthodox Church really, after 2,000 years, has proven that it can definitely implement the notion of democracy. Actually, in the early Byzantine era, the church and the state were hand in hand together. If you know of the sign of the two-headed eagle of the Byzantine Empire, why did it have two heads? Because one head is for the state and the other head is for the church. They were both together governing. And although the emperor took care of the temporal affairs, the church took care of the social affairs. It took care of the society. It took care of the morality. It was the moral ballast to the emperor and to the court, so that they would not really go astray. You know what, let's legalize marijuana. And then the church will say, hold on a second. No, we will not legalize marijuana. That's it. We should not do this because it is wrong. And these are the reasons why it's wrong. The church is really active in the society. It's active in the education. It's active in the hospitals. It knows more, sometimes a lot more, than the government itself about what the people really need. Now, you might say, well, there has been plenty of corruption. Of course. Always there is corruption. I'm not denying that. But the system works. It has worked. Well, almost for 1,000 years. Shall we expect liberalism to last 1,000 years? Well, I sincerely doubt that. Another point is the social and economic development. This is the most important point when you really empower the individual. This is something that the leftist regimes leave out because they always prefer the collective over the individual. And this is the problem here. But in Christianity, especially in the early Christianity, the individual value is extremely important. That's why colosseums were closed, hospitals were built, education was focused on. It was all designed to build on the individual. The model of Christianity, of early Christianity, is a lot better than the liberal model because it has all the positive sides of liberalism, but it does not have the negative sides of liberalism. You see, freedom and egalitarianism are a zero-sum game in liberalism. Democracy quickly unravels to deep state, where a handful of the elite will control the world, like in the banking system. Social advancement is made under the strict moral code of Christian tradition and Holy Scripture. It will not shift its morals like what's happening today. It will keep up its moral ballast. It's essential for the survival of the community. So the question is, if Christianity can do it better, why did the liberals take over? Well, the answer is, most Christians have forgotten the tradition of early Christianity. Unfortunately, that's the reason why. They have veered off from the teachings of the elders, and they have chosen to follow the philosophies of the ancients over their own fathers of the faith. The truth is, liberalism began from the church itself, causing it to split to thousands of pieces due to the church's leadership's lust for power and temporal affairs.
Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more content. If you like a copy of this book, the link is in the description box below.